teacher recruitment, ESSER funding. I don't ever read the newspaper, so I couldn't tell you.
I looked this morning on your education. I didn't see
Only time superintendent had.
Jay read it and he said they quoted me, and other than that.
I read the post this morning, Cleveland Education.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Morning, Ed. Good, thanks. Clean, and that's the
Okay.
best.
Okay. Do they have it also?
I did.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yankees, Red Sox, that's a big rivalry. Be happy to root for Boston if we can get this wrapped up today.
On our side, I don't think we have, Gonzalo, do we have anyone else coming?
Mark is out. That's it. I don't know who else.
I think Heather said she was running a couple minutes late,
All right.
but we can get
What's
started.
your call?
Well, no, it's we're all set. Thank you. Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome back to the boardroom here. So we've distributed. You have a copy of our latest proposal. We tried to be responsive to the prior proposal put forth by CTA. So this is our counter. Just in terms of opening remarks, I know that I appreciate CTA had brought to the table a comprehensive salary proposal, for that would not just address the MOU, but go beyond to basically the potential salary settlement for the whole year. The district we're just not ready to have that full conversation yet. We would like to try to focus on the MOU and then transition to bargaining the contract and opening up the entire contract. So we've gone back and just kind of narrowed this down to the MOU. There's some compensation components within here. A couple of them you've seen before. You'll see the tutorial rate, and I think we're in agreement on that, where we would increase it from 25 to 35. We've increased the stipend for sub-coverage as requested by CTA, so I think we're in agreement there. And then the other piece that is new is CTA had proposed the $1,000 bonus for those teachers that were left out of the governor's initiative, and we've added that piece. The pieces that remain in there, I guess what the district is asking for is the Google Classroom, and then the posting of recorded lessons for those students that are quarantined. And let's see, is there anything else? I think that's it, really. Those are the major components. So we've got the language all spelled out. We were hoping that maybe we could sort through this today and try to reach some type of an agreement. And Mr. Bogus can speak to any of these items in greater detail. He helped me pull the language together and worked with our team. So at that point, I could open it up for conversation.
One of the things that I'm looking at, number 1B, talks about daily agendas. If somebody takes a picture and posts it, that'll be acceptable?
Yes.
Instead of them having to rewrite?
Yeah, the last sentence of 1B, we added that.
Sorry, I should learn to read all the way through.
No
Yes,
problem,
ma'am.
no problem. I think that was your suggestion.
It
So
was.
we incorporated that. Good point.
I have a question on 1C. I think the only way we could agree to that provision is the elimination of the word "to the extent possible" with regards to the list of volunteers. The tutoring services take place during planning periods as well as for 2 hours after school each day. If people volunteer, that's their business, but we worry that the line reads, "The principal will select teachers from a list of volunteers to the extent possible," means that people could be conscripted into working for hours after the clock or during their planning. There's just no scenario where we can agree to extend the hours randomly on a day-by-day basis for our members, because it's not like they would be given a schedule that they could agree to. They would just be told one day, or maybe a couple days in advance, I guess, that you have to work from 3 to 5 today. I could foresee that being problematic, because if I say I have something to do, then what if I always say I have something to do, whether that's true or not? You couldn't prove it, you couldn't disprove it. So that, to the extent possible, worries us, and we want to make sure that that's a volunteer-only type of arrangement.
Well, I can tell you why we added that. And I think principals, by and large, will utilize volunteers, and they'll work around people's schedules. To the extent possible, it's just because we have, by state law or state rule, we have this responsibility to provide the instructional support to those students quarantined. And I wanted to guard against a situation maybe where there's just the principal has to fulfill that responsibility, and maybe he or she has exhausted the list of volunteers, and they have to just do something to get by to meet that requirement. But I don't think there'd be a whole lot of people getting tapped without their consent, but it could happen.
Okay, we'll try to think if there's some sort of middle ground there. It's just difficult to envision if I know my workday ends at 2:45. I'm a high school teacher, and I'm told I have to work from 3 to 5 that day, or whatever the 2-hour range is. We'll need to think if there's something in the middle there.
Okay, I'll talk to our team as well.
I have a question in that same paragraph where it says, based upon the needs of schools for students who are ill or who are quarantined. So we're opening this up for anybody that's absent? I thought it was just going to be for the quarantine.
No, ma'am. We're using the definition of if you go down to the quarantine student for daily instruction, Article 2, Section 2B, that's the definition where we would be using.
Okay. Okay.
Another question that came up, so item 1A, and I guess 1B to an extent, will be expected to provide content, classwork, homework to quarantine students daily via Google Classroom. Teachers had inquired with us, so what happens if there's nothing to post online that day? Like it was, well, I guess for recordings there would be one if that's what we agreed to, but so what if I have a student who's quarantined, and as an individual teacher, I email my quarantined students' work every day or communicate with them to say, hey, I know you're out. So if I have, again, say a finite number of quarantined students, 1 kid, 3 kids throughout all my periods, and I email them directly, am I still expected to post on Google Classroom? Again, if it's like homework, if I email files, assignments, or I email an agenda or a link to a video, there's been questions about, there are teachers who prefer, because these kids are out but they may not be sick, to engage them on a daily basis via email, and it might be redundant to, they're already doing it via email, and then they're going to have to post all this stuff online. So what would happen? Though it says expected to post online every day, but what if that's my means of communicating and giving the work to my quarantine students? Am I going to get in trouble if I emailed the student the work versus posted the student's work on Google Classroom?
We can look at that. We were thinking the Google Classroom was the preferred, just method of delivery and make that consistent. Right now, teachers can email or use Google Classroom or even send home paperwork. So I guess potentially, we were trying to get to just that Google Classroom platform.
Okay. And then with regards to the Google Meets, I know we'd had discussions with our members and kind of as a consequence of the governor's recent action and the mass reduction in quarantines, and I think what everyone would anticipate will be a continued reduction, or at least being at a minimal level, because they don't have to quarantine now if they're exposed. Even if they do quarantine, it's likely to be reduced dramatically down to a day or two, maybe while they await a test result, versus many days, which is what it would have been prior. So I think, you guys might have an updated number, but how many students are quarantined right now in the district? Does anyone have that number?
I can give you an approximate number, and you're right, it's come down dramatically. When we first started these conversations, we were having 4,000 to 5,000 students sent home on any given day. That dropped to about the 1,200 range, and then with the latest change in the emergency rule, where parents have the option if their student is not exhibiting any symptoms to keep their student in school, now we're hovering into like 600 to 700 student range.
Okay. So I guess, yeah, the question, or, the philosophical question has come up, is whether or not, if it's down to on average of 2 or 3 kids per school district-wide, whether or not recording lessons is as necessary. That's something that's come up to us from our membership. I know this is a broader point of contention, but the PLC item number 3, I guess we might be at a point where we just don't need any language. We have a joint memorandum. There's arbitration ruling in the state of Florida that the state's planning time is individual planning time, not group planning time. It seems like there's an effort in here to use this potentially to make it seem like only this year these things apply. So it says 21, 22, even though PLCs have been optional for 5 or 6 years. And then again, the reference to the arbitration awards, we just reject that as being applicable. So if we can't come to agreement with the language that we agreed to last year, I guess we would probably just walk away from it and rely on past precedent and the memo that exists. I don't think there's a need to belabor that one.
Okay, why don't we just strike it then entirely?
I think if there's no compromise in there, yeah, it's better to rely on years of past practice in that memo. And then I think one of the, at least for me, just looking at it, the last items is the duration. We'd expressed earlier that just based on our experience last year with staff and the combination of the fact that the numbers are down, the quarantines are down, the vaccine hopefully for minors will be available in the coming month or so. I don't know how comfortable we feel, at least for obviously the working conditions parts. We discussed, we don't want to reduce the rate of the sub-pay or reduce the rate of the tutoring at the halfway mark in the year, but the requirement for Google Classroom and recorded lessons and things like that, we would prefer that this expires, and pending mutual agreement at the semester break, it would not continue unless we came to those terms. It's just, again, based on last year's experience, we have a serious hesitancy to lock ourselves into working conditions that would then become the sole decision of the district to amend, because we couldn't do that unilaterally, obviously, so that the duration date is still a concern for us. I think at first blush for me, those are my concerns.
Mr. Katz, could I go back to your past, I guess, commentary around the recorded lessons? I think it goes to say the reason we have the June 30th date is 30 days prior to the start of the school year. We were facing or looking at a normal school year, right? Positivity rate was significantly down, and all of a sudden, boom, Delta variant hits, and we're in a very different world than what we were starting July 1 into August 1st. I think the concern is if we don't have an extended contract date on this, 60 days, we're right back to at this table, and we don't know what after maybe Thanksgiving holds. We're talking about Delta into Lambda variants. We're talking about a variety of different things on down the list that if we have this in place, we have flexibility much greater than trying to come back to the table by December. The other piece to that is with the extended contract date and the recorded lessons, the idea that this would have continuity of instruction, the idea that our students would, no matter what, if there's only 3 or if there's 30, that positivity rate is going to have tremendous impact on our student achievement.
Good morning, Spokane Middle School. Today is Monday, October.
Question on the tutorial rate and the substitute rates. We have, August and September, where that's taking place. Are we going to make that retroactive?
No, our proposal is that we would, as soon as we can reach agreement, then we would start paying it on a go-forward. And it's, these supplemental pay items are not, it's not like when we settle a base, increase to the base salary by a percentage, that's easier basically to go back and calculate. When you've got part-time rates and sub-stipend coverages that may be split across multiple teachers, it's administratively, it's very difficult to try to go back and make that retroactive.
You've heard the president express the concern about making this for the full year. And, it's unfortunately based upon what happened last year. I know that there's new players in the seats now. So would there be any kind of compromise to that? Maybe some kind of guarantee that we are going to, midway through this, revisit, or a guarantee of something that if there are issues that are coming up that we want them addressed, because obviously the people in the trenches are the ones that would be bringing them to us. Thought process.
Yeah, I guess I'm having trouble I understand, I guess you feel like there was a failure for the district to recognize an agreement to, I guess, revisit things last year. But with this proposal for the remainder of this school year, which we're already a couple months into, we're talking about some measures just to accommodate the quarantined students. So we're not saying, so that's really what we're trying to get help with. And then we're increasing the pay for the tutorial rate and the sub coverage, so I feel like that's a positive thing that teachers might want to be able to plan on for the entire school year. And, we're going to have bargaining of the full contract, I guess, getting underway in the not too distant future. So at some point, some of this may make its way, I guess, into the permanent contract, but I don't know. It's hard to predict when those negotiations would conclude. So we were just looking for the kind of like the stability to say we have a plan in place for this school year. We have this responsibility to provide instructional support to those kids that are quarantined. Fortunately, the numbers are down, and we hope they stay down. And if the vaccine becomes available for all school-age children, that should hopefully help significantly as well. But I guess I don't see like where the potential harm is to employees by having this in place for the whole year. I guess I shouldn't say harm, but I guess there is a little extra work there. So they have a quarantine student, they know they're going to have to do something for the whole school year rather than just till December. So,
And so I guess just maybe to elaborate with another example is, so if we negotiate this, just like we negotiated an MOU last year, and then it becomes obvious at some point that some of these are no longer necessary. We ran into an issue last year where in elementary schools at certain points, like 100% of kids had come back who were back. Kids remained virtual, full virtual. And we got to a point where at some elementary schools, even though the language in the MOU said that when you don't have any virtual kids, you don't have to do some of this stuff anymore, the schools were telling teachers that if a kid is just absent, you now have to still do this. They're not a virtual kid. They're not COVID. They just, they're not there on Friday. Now you have to record that class for the absent student. So we were told that it had morphed into, and teachers were being required now to provide these activities for any reason, for any student who didn't show up. So again, that's just another example where the language was stretched last year, and our efforts to activate that provision that said we should sit down and renegotiate if we have concerns, going back to the start of the year, had been fruitless. So again, it's the simplest way is, we just have some past recent experiences that make us hesitant to commit to additional work. Another kind of tangent to that is that while we've tried to make clear that there should be continued restriction or optionality on the PLCs, we tried to protect some morning planning time for our elementary and middle school teachers by virtue of not making it mandatory for them to do the breakfast duty, which they're doing this year again. We have a fundamental concern that'll probably reach into the contract negotiations too, that we're going to start taking the position that when the district asks teachers to do more, they have to simultaneously identify relief, which is a reduction in some other responsibilities. I guess it's akin to the district's position that when we negotiate raises, if we ask for, say, master's supplements to go up, the district will say we have a finite pile of money for raises. If you want master's degree supplements to go up, that's going to come from the raise pool. We're starting to look at time similarly, that if additional responsibilities are requested that take time, we're going to be looking to pair them with reductions in responsibilities that take time, so that it doesn't, again, blow up a budget or blow up the time that people have to perform their duties. So there's a number of additional responsibilities in here, but no real reduction or protection from some other activities that also have come up and taken time. So that's just me opining about a broader concern about time as a resource and the need to balance new things with efficiencies or reductions in old responsibilities.
okay. I guess to your first concern about people maybe trying to misuse this for students who are just absent for another reason outside of COVID, the way we've worded this, we've been very clear to define what quarantine means, and it's, either exposed or contracted to COVID. And that's deliberate on our part too. We have to, there's no allowance at the state level for us to revert back to that innovative synchronous blended learning. So we're not trying to do that. We also don't want to incentivize students to be absent, and make it too easy to say, well, hey, I'd like to take Friday off, and I know if I'm absent, I'm going to get all my lessons recorded for me. We want kids in school for a variety of reasons, mainly that it's the best place for them. So we're together on that in terms of just using this for its sole intended purpose, which is to better serve those students that are quarantined. And then hopefully, I think it'll be good. I know the teachers take a vested interest in the success of their students, and this will, I think, help the kids. If they're missing 5 to 10 days, that's a significant chunk of time. So that's what we're trying to guard against too much instructional loss.
Can I make a suggestion?
Yes.
Can you take your 2B and put it in under 1? In other words, let's get the definition up front so that when you're reading through this, it just flows better, because if you have the definition, then when you go into the part about B, it says if a class, so just moving it, it's just,
I agree, and also, we'll strike that in 1C there where it says who are ill, or we'll just strike that, and it'll be students who are quarantined. But we could insert the definition, where would you like it, Denise? Should it become the new B? Yeah, okay. So we'll insert 2B here, and then these I'll change.
Okay, I noticed, Justin mentioned teachers getting, additional work without getting additional time to do it. From what I understand, I don't think they have a whole lot of time on their hands where they can just, add something in and there's no real problem. And then see where we had a request in our last proposal.
Sorry about that.
Oh, God. Okay. We had in our last proposal some type of compensation for our teachers having to do this additional work. They're not getting additional time. They are getting additional duties. And now, because in our proposal, we didn't have recording as a part of our proposal. We did have Google Classroom, but not recording. And you have recording in here, and yet, there was, not only is not included in here about the supplement for teachers, but it hasn't been discussed either, and that kind of concerns me, that there's nothing for teachers in terms of what they're doing during these challenging times. And so that's a challenge.
Our thought on that, right, we are asking the teachers to help us out here and chip in. Hopefully the recording of the lesson is not a huge time, killer, that they can, turn on the camera and record one of their normal lessons for the day. There's not a second lesson that they can try to record what they have delivered to their students that are present, and then post that on Google Classroom. I understand there's not compensation tied to the recording aspect of it, but that's why we tried to put some things in that we could address, like I don't know if it's the same teacher, but if they're doing a tutorial work, or if they're doing a sub coverage, at least they'll see some additional compensation there. Or if they're one of the 1,300 left out by the governor, they'll get the $1,000.
Okay. Well, of course, we'll caucus and get
Okay.
back with you, but you do know we have some challenges.
I
We
guess-
tried to make movement where we could, and we welcome your comments when you return from caucus. We'll try to work with you. We'd like to get this done.
One more item that we might inject into a conversation about Google Meets is that we had language, I believe, last year that spoke to evaluations and the prohibition of administrators during evaluations, like dinging teachers on elements relative to their providing instruction to this new situation, which would be, when you're recording your lesson, you might alter your movements in the classroom. You might already be restricting your movements just due to COVID, but there was a protection, I believe, in the last MOU that said that, you couldn't be marked negatively because maybe you didn't circulate as much or during an evaluation observation because you were trying to stay on camera if you're recording a Google Meet. So we might try to dig back into that old MOU and find that language, because if we moved in this direction, we would want to make sure that teachers weren't getting comments that they didn't do certain things because they were trying to fulfill their duties to do the other things. We'll look back into the MOU on that one, just to bring that up now.
Mr. Katz, clarifying, I believe that conversation came in our past MOU, and it was not used as primary, but perhaps secondary? Is that the same
So that's a separate
issue?
separate item relative
Okay.
to potential discipline or investigations. This is explicitly for the Marzano evaluation system, and if there's an element that that requires you to do something, but by virtue of now trying to perform your altered working condition duties, you don't do that thing, or just by virtue of trying to be socially distanced. So, yeah, very specific to evaluation observations.
Understood, thank you.
So I guess, yeah, we might
Can I
caucus.
ask a clarifying question? On the list of 1,300, that includes the pre-K teachers?
I think pre-K may have had their own bonus program.
Yeah, the pre-K teachers were part of a separate program, separate and apart from the K-12 teachers. And so they should have received their bonus by now. I mean, that's something that I can go back and verify that they have, but we did have to submit it on a separate list.
Okay, so they got the
But we were thinking that
1,000.
within that pre-K group, just as in the regular instructional group, there were people who were left out. And so we want to make sure that we look at the pre-K people, any of those pre-K people who may have been left out of their grant as well.
Okay, we can do that.
All right.
All right, so we'll caucus for a little bit, and see what we might be able to bring back.
If I may ask a question as well before we go to caucus. Mr. Burke, is it possible for me to receive the documents we're looking at today, your counter proposal, by way of an email rather quickly so that I can discuss intelligently with my fellow team members from a distance?
Yes, absolutely, Mr. Longhofer, be on the way.
Thank you very much. Just the school email address is fine for me on that one.
Okay, thank you.
And team, I'll just use a personal email to send me whatever Zoom link we're caucusing on.
Okay. All right, so we'll caucus for now, and I guess we could text you.
Okay,
We'll reach out to you just so you're not sitting in here if it takes more than 10 minutes or something like that.
that'd be great, thank you.
Is there room?
School board stuff on Wednesday, and we don't expect to be done it tomorrow. So if there's a way to check if you're willing availability on Thursday or Friday morning or early afternoon, preferably, where we could kind of come back with one final try.
Okay, we'll make that work.
I know. I think our team. I think Thursday morning is good for everybody. Whether it's 8 or 9 or whatever works for you guys.
Uh,
Thursday's
7:30,
actually a big
Denise?
day for us. We have a State Board of Education meeting.
Oh yeah, yes,
So,
understood. What about Friday?
Friday at 10 or 10:30, maybe 10 o'clock Friday morning? From like 10 to 12?
I think that'll likely work.
Okay, terrific. And well, hopefully we can get this room here, but we'll tell everybody it's important.
Mr. Burke,
Yes, Mr. Longhofer?
can you have someone from your office send that notice of that date, time, and that calendar invite to my principal as well as to me so that they can be advised to have coverage?
Yes. Mr. Bogus is going to help us with that.
Fabulous. Thank you very much.
All right, we definitely
Okay.
we appreciate the counter, and there's certainly common ground in there, some of it, and we look forward to coming back on Friday with what hopefully is a good document to work from and finish things off.
That'd be terrific. Yeah, I hope we can get this done this week. All right, well, we look forward to seeing you Friday.
All right,
All right,
thank you guys
thank
very
you.
much.
Thank you.
Middle or high? It's